Right after feeding his baby, Trieu Duong noticed something. Truc Lam wasn't sleepy. She was wide awake, reaching out as if she wanted something more. He realized she needed a simple toy to keep her happy, so he decided to make one with his own hands. But would that small handmade toy be enough to make her smile? Stay with us to find out. And don't forget to subscribe if you love warm father-daughter stories like this. The little meal had already ended, but the moment still lingered in the quiet house. Trieu Duong sat near the cradle with baby Truc Lam resting gently against his chest, one broad hand supporting her tiny back, while the other softly patted between her shoulders. The room was calm except for the faint sounds of the countryside outside, the breeze moving through the leaves, the distant clucking of chickens, the small everyday sounds of a simple life continuing around them. But right there in his arms, his whole attention belonged to his daughter. Truc Lam had just finished drinking her milk, and now her eyes were wide open, round and bright, as if she was not ready to sleep yet. She leaned against him with that soft, warm heaviness only a baby has, safe and content after being fed. Trieu Duong smiled down at her and kept patting her back in a slow, steady rhythm. He knew she needed to burp before she could truly relax, so he stayed patient, never rushing, just holding her close and waiting for that tiny sound. A moment later, Truc Lam let out a small burp. He chuckled under his breath, his face immediately softening even more. "That's better," he murmured, as if she could understand every word. Then he adjusted her gently in his arms and looked at her again. Instead of getting sleepy, she seemed even more alert now. Her little hands moved in front of her chest. Her eyes followed the light across the room. She made a few quiet baby sounds, not crying, not fussy, just awake, curious, and looking for something more. She wasn't hungry anymore. She wasn't uncomfortable. She simply wanted to look, to feel, to be entertained in her own tiny way. And that was the moment the thought came to him. Trieu Duong glanced toward the cradle. It was safe, clean, and carefully prepared. He had already done so much to make sure his daughter had a protected place to sleep. But now, looking at her bright expression and her restless little hands, he realized that Truc Lam needed more than comfort. She also needed something gentle and playful, something she could look at, reach for, and enjoy while lying in her cradle. Not something expensive, not something complicated, just a small toy made by her father's hands. He looked back at her and smiled as though he had already made up his mind. "You want something to play with, don't you?" he said softly. Of course, Truc Lam only blinked at him and moved her fingers again, but to him, that was enough. He held her for another moment, enjoying the closeness, then slowly laid her down in the cradle. He tucked the blanket lightly around her body and stood there for a few seconds, making sure she was calm. Her eyes stayed open, watching him. Every time he stepped away, her gaze seemed to follow him. That look touched him more deeply than words ever could. It was such a small thing, but he understood it. In her quiet baby way, she was looking for him, trusting him, waiting for him. And Trieu Duong felt once again that same strong, simple promise inside his heart. The promise to keep caring for her in every possible way, even in the smallest details. Before he could begin anything, there was still another task waiting. The chickens needed to be fed. Life with a baby did not pause the rest of the work. The chores of the day still had to be done, and Trieu Duong had long since learned how to carry both responsibilities at once. He checked on Truc Lam one more time, making sure she was safe in the cradle, then stepped outside with a basket in hand. The morning air was fresh, carrying the earthy smell of soil, wood, and grass. Sunlight spread across the yard in soft patches, and the chickens were already moving around, pecking at the ground and waiting for their food. Trieu Duong walked toward them with practiced steps, but even while he worked, his mind stayed with his daughter inside the house. He scattered feed for the chickens, watching them hurry closer in a flutter of movement and sound. The scene was ordinary, familiar, part of the same daily rhythm he had known for so long. Yet now, everything he did seemed connected to Truc Lam. Feeding the chickens was no longer just feeding the chickens. It was part of building a life for the two of them. Part of keeping their days going. Part of making sure the home stayed warm, stable, and full of care. As he watched the chickens eat, his eyes drifted around the yard searching. If he was going to make a toy for Truc Lam, it had to be safe, light, and simple. Something that could move gently above her cradle and catch her attention. Maybe soft pieces that swayed when the air moved. Maybe something with shapes that she could stare at and follow with her eyes. At her age, she didn't need much. Just a little color, a little motion, a little sign that the world around her could also be tender and fun. He began noticing the small materials around him in a different way. A few smooth bamboo strips leaned against the wall. There were bits of cloth left from older household use, clean enough to reuse. Some natural string, a few light wooden pieces. Nothing fancy, but enough. More than enough if the hands using them were careful. And Trieu Duong's hands were always careful when it came to his daughter. He finished feeding the chickens, then gathered what he thought he could use and carried everything back toward the house. Before sitting down to work, he looked in on Truc Lam again. She was still awake. This time she was even more active, moving her arms and legs with that sweet little excitement babies have when they're in a good mood. The moment she saw him, she seemed to settle, as if simply knowing he was nearby was enough to reassure her. Trieu Duong crouched beside the cradle and let her wrap her tiny fingers around one of his. He smiled. "Wait a little longer," he whispered. "Dad is making something for you." Then he sat down near the doorway where the light was good and began to work. He started with the bamboo, trimming and smoothing each small piece so there would be no rough edges. Every movement was measured. He checked each corner with his fingers more than once. If anything felt sharp, even slightly, he fixed it immediately. He wasn't making something decorative for a shelf. He was making something for a 3-month-old baby girl who trusted the world through him. That thought made him even more gentle. After shaping a light frame, he turned to the cloth pieces. He cut them into small, soft shapes that would be easy for Truc Lam's eyes to notice. Simple little forms, each one light enough to sway. He tied them carefully with string, testing the knots again and again to make sure nothing would come loose. Now and then, he paused to look over at the cradle, and every time he did, Truc Lam was there, watching him. Sometimes she blinked slowly. Sometimes she kicked her legs. Sometimes she made a tiny sound, almost as if she were trying to join in with what he was doing. Those little reactions made him smile more than anything else could have. The work in his hands no longer felt like work. It felt like a conversation between father and daughter, carried out in glances, smiles, and quiet presence. Outside, the day moved on. Inside, the room filled with a peaceful kind of purpose. Trieu Duong continued shaping, tying, adjusting, and checking every piece with care. He gently lifted the unfinished toy once or twice to see how it moved in the air. It swayed softly, just the way he had hoped. Not too much, not too fast. Calm enough for a baby to enjoy while lying safely in her cradle. He looked toward Truc Lam again. Her eyes stayed fixed on him, calm and shining. And in that simple little house, with sunlight at the door, and his daughter watching from her cradle, Trieu Duong kept working with the quiet happiness of a father who knew exactly why he was doing it. He wasn't just making a toy, he was making another small piece of love for her world. Trieu Duong lowered the last piece into place and sat back for a moment, studying what he had made. It was simple, just the way he wanted it to be. A light hanging toy, handmade from the materials he had gathered around the yard and home, carefully shaped with smooth edges, soft cloth pieces, and gentle movement. It was not something bought from a store, and it did not need to be. What mattered was that every part of it had been prepared with patience, tested with care, and made especially for Truc Lam. He lifted it slightly and gave it the smallest push. The little shape swayed softly in the air. For a second, he imagined how they would look above the cradle, moving just enough to catch her attention, just enough to make her curious, just enough to keep her company when she was awake and looking around for something new. The thought alone made his expression soften. Then he stood up and carried it over to the cradle. Truc Lam was still lying there awake, her tiny body wrapped in comfort, her dark eyes following him with full attention. She had been so quiet while he worked, as if she somehow understood that everything he was doing was for her. As he came closer, her arms moved again, and her feet kicked lightly under the blanket. Trieu Duong smiled down at her. "Look at this," he said in a warm, gentle voice. "Dad made this for you." He leaned over the cradle and carefully attached the toy above her, checking the balance first, then testing the support, then checking it again. He tugged each knot lightly. He made sure the height was safe. He watched closely to be certain nothing hung too low and nothing could fall. His hands moved slowly, precisely, with the kind of careful attention only a loving father would give. Once he was satisfied, he stepped back a little. The hanging toy moved softly above Truc Lam. At first, she simply stared. Her eyes widened, fixed on the shapes above her as they swayed in the air. For a few quiet seconds, she did not move much at all. She just watched, completely absorbed, as if an entirely new little world had appeared above her. Bed. Then her hands began to lift. Her fingers opened and closed. Her feet kicked faster. A tiny sound left her mouth, not a cry, but a bright little coo of interest. Trieu Duong laughed quietly. That small reaction was enough to fill the room with joy. He crouched beside the cradle and gently nudged one of the hanging pieces so it moved again. Truc Lam's gaze followed it with full concentration. Her face looked so awake, so engaged, so happy in that innocent baby way that needed no explanation. She wasn't just lying there now. She was discovering, looking, reaching, responding. And Trieu Duong could see immediately that he had been right. She had needed something like this. Not because she was unhappy before, but because she was growing. Day by day, little by little, she was becoming more aware of the world around her. Her eyes wanted something to follow. Her hands wanted something to reach toward. Her quiet moments of wakefulness wanted a little wonder in them, and he was grateful that he had noticed. He rested one hand on the edge of the cradle and stayed there watching her. Truc Lam continued staring up at the toy, blinking slowly, then moving her arms as if she hoped she could touch the shapes above her. Every now and then, her attention shifted from the toy back to her father's face, and each time it did, Trieu Duong met her gaze with the same calm smile. It was one of those moments that felt very small from the outside. A father beside a cradle, a baby looking up, a handmade toy swaying gently overhead. But inside that moment was something much bigger. It was trust. It was care. It was the quiet happiness of being seen and loved. Trieu Duong reached into the cradle and softly touched Truc Lam's hand. Her fingers curled around one of his again, tiny and warm. He looked at her and felt that familiar tenderness settle deep in his chest. Life was not easy. The chores never ended. There was always something to fix, something to build, something to carry, something to prepare. But these small moments with his daughter made every bit of effort feel light, because everything he did had a reason now. He was not just working to pass the day, he was building comfort around her, protection around her, joy around her. Even something as simple as a toy hanging above her cradle became part of that promise. Truc Lam suddenly made another happy little sound and kicked both legs at once. Trieu Duong chuckled and leaned closer. "You like it, don't you?" Her eyes turned back toward him, bright and full of life, and for a second she seemed to smile in that tiny baby way that was still half expression, half feeling. But to him it was enough, more than enough. It felt like her answer. He stayed there, talking softly to her as the toy moved above her head. His voice remained low and warm, the kind of gentle voice a baby could relax into. He pointed to the shapes one by one, as though introducing them to her, and watched her follow the movement. Sometimes she stared at the toy. Sometimes she stared at him. Sometimes she seemed to compare the two, as if deciding which one she liked more. That made him smile even wider. Outside, the day continued its usual rhythm. The yard waited, the animals still made their sounds. The work of the house was never truly finished. But for a while, Trieu Duong let the rest of the world stay outside. He gave this moment fully to his daughter. The cradle sat in the soft light of the room, no longer just a place for sleep, but a little space of comfort and discovery. Above it swayed the toy he had made with his own hands. Beside it sat the father who had thought carefully about what his daughter needed, then gone out and built it from what he had. Not for praise, not for appearance, simply because he loved her. And Truc Lam, lying there beneath it, looked deeply content. She watched the toy drift from side to side, then looked back at Trieu Duong once more. Their eyes met, and something quiet and beautiful passed between them. She did not have words, she did not need them. Her calm face, her small sounds, her bright gaze, those were enough. He understood her in the way only a parent sometimes can, through feeling more than language. Trieu Duong leaned in a little closer to the cradle. "You won't be bored now," he whispered. "Dad will keep making good things for you." It was such a simple sentence, but it carried the whole truth of his heart. He would keep noticing. He would keep building. He would keep protecting. He would keep loving her through action, one small thing at a time. The toy swayed again, and Truc Lam lifted her hand toward it. She could not reach it yet, but the effort itself made Trieu Duong proud. She was trying, learning, growing. And he would be there for every step of it, from these tiny reaching hands to all the days still ahead. For a long moment, neither of them needed anything else. No rush, no noise, no grand gesture. Just a father and his daughter in a peaceful room, looking at each other with quiet happiness, while the handmade toy moved softly above the cradle. Trieu Duong's face was relaxed now, free from strain, warmed by the sight in front of him. Truc Lam looked back at him with open, trusting eyes, and then at the toy, and then back at him again. It was as if she knew exactly who had made her little world feel richer today. And maybe, in her own baby way, she did. The room held that tenderness for a while longer. The soft movement of the toy, the gentle breathing of the child, the patient presence of the father. Nothing dramatic happened. Nothing needed to. The beauty of the moment came from its simplicity. He had fed her. He had burped her. He had noticed what she needed. He had finished his chores. He had made something just for her. And now the two of them shared the reward of that care together. Truc Lam gave one more tiny coo, her eyes shining as she looked from the toy back to her father. Trieu Duong smiled at her, and in that quiet little house, the two of them stayed there facing one another, safe, peaceful, and happy, while love hung gently above the cradle, moving in the soft air. After feeding baby Truc Lam, Trieu Duong gently burps her and notices she is not sleepy but quietly curious, her eyes following everything around her. Realizing she needs something to keep her engaged, he decides to make a simple toy for her. After finishing his daily chore of feeding the chickens, he carefully gathers safe, lightweight materials and begins crafting by hand. Every step is done with patience and care, ensuring it is gentle and suitable for his baby girl. Once finished, he hangs the toy above her cradle. Truc Lam immediately becomes fascinated, watching and reacting with small, happy movements. Seeing her joy, Trieu Duong feels a quiet happiness. In that peaceful moment, the simple handmade toy becomes a symbol of his love, care, and constant protection for his daughter.